Thought I was going to be a Spanish teacher, and then I quickly learned through like my education coursework that I didn't want to be a teacher and deal with children all day. Although every summer I wonder if I've made the right choice.
Science taking a ride behind you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spending essentially the first 6 months here, like being the doer, the executor was super enlightening and really helped me then step back and say, okay, what's the vision for how we build this team? We thought we were going to build demand gen functions for each business unit. And so we were going down a path of like creating the separate demand gen silos for each of those business units. But I think one of the things is like when you don't have those typical like demand gen functions already in place, like a rising tide lifts all the boats, right? So when we think about search engine optimization, you don't do search engine optimization just for, especially as you're like building it from the ground up, you don't do it just for the mid-market segment. Like rankings will improve for all of the segments. When you don't have nurture campaigns in place for all of the segments, building those, I'm not just going to roll them out for one segment, I'd roll it out across the business. And then, so again, that will lift all of the segments as opposed to just the single one. And so that was a shift that we made, which was rather than thinking about it from business unit specific demand gen, let's think about it from a tactics and channels perspective. And so what I'm building out now is essentially 2 centers of excellence, a center of excellence around account-based marketing. That will have significant influence on the enterprise business unit and the mid-market segment, and then a digital center of excellence that will have like significant influence for the small to medium business. Mid-market will benefit from both. It's like a Venn diagram, which is why I keep doing this with my hands, which I'm sure is a best practice for video. So, but like, yeah, so that's kind of, that's how I'm thinking about it now. Someone who doesn't put themselves first, puts the team first. So I'm always looking for people who want to deliver results on their own and will get in and do the work and will execute, but also understand that they are a piece of a much bigger puzzle. And so like, how does that one person and all of the work, how do they become a great teammate and help elevate the team and take them up? The second trait is like, I'm always looking for somebody who isn't afraid to fail. I say this all the time, probably to the point of making people nauseous at this point, but like I really firmly believe that failure is a part of learning, and if you're not failing, you're not learning, and if you're not learning, then like what's the point? Like you might as well just pack it up and go home. And so you have to be okay with failing. Like not everything is going to work, and you have to be okay with telling that story and sharing that story of failure back to the team so that we don't have to learn that lesson. Like every one of the team members doesn't have to learn that lesson. Like we can just learn it once and then move on to the next and make sure we don't make that same mistake once, 2, 3, 4 times. The third thing is like, so we talked about people want to execute and are great team members, people who aren't afraid to fail. And then the last one is probably like, are they a positive person who's going to be able to persevere and be okay to go through change, right? This is true of Drift, but I think true of any business. Like I see it all the time, like things change. And so it's just the pace of how they change that's dependent on the company. And so like the smaller the company, the more quicker the change, the larger the company, the more slow the change comes often. But they have to be able to like roll with the punches, and it's okay that our strategy is here today and maybe shifts there tomorrow. And how do you make that shift? And like, it's okay to be frustrated by it. It's okay to like be like, oh, that's so annoying. But like, then can you get over it and get on to the next thing? Especially because I've added so many team members to the team at such a rapid rate. I think I've added 5 people in the last 4 or 5 months. And so like, that's a really fast pace, and it's hard to like, okay, get to know Drift, get to know your role, get to excellence on your job, and like get to know your team members and be happy and fulfilled and like it. And that's a lot to ask. And so one of the things that we're doing as a team is like, I actually got this from, what's the book? The Score Will Take Care of Itself, where Bill, what's his last name? Always started every meeting he had where like every team member gave a weekend report, and they would talk about what they did on the weekends all the time and like go through that. And so rather than just talking about weekends, we just ask a question of each other every time. So whether it be like, hey, what other languages do you speak and why? Or if you don't speak another language, like which language would you like to learn about? We covered what was one of the biggest fails of your career so far, and what did you learn from it, and how did you use it to make it better? And so we talk about just personal things that have nothing to do with the analytics of the business, because then we spend the rest of the meeting going through like, okay, here's where you are from a pipeline perspective. Is that because we're missing at the top of the funnel, or is that because it's not converting all the way through, or is that just what's the three things every lead type or interested person type has a stakeholder, and what you have to report on from an analytics perspective is, are you above pace or behind pace? If you're above, why, and how can we double down on that? If you're behind, why, and what are we doing about it? Or where can we make that up? And so like tackling that as a team. So I think it's important we carve out that time to like, hey, let's build a team, let's get to know each other better, and then like let's take care of business on the other side.